Bushfire emergency occurring right across the country at the moment. Serious situations in Victoria, in New South Wales as well. And it's going to be a long day and long night as crews face a challenging and difficult condition for much of the country. The situation right now, Victoria is under 3 emergency warnings as we speak at the moment. So 3 emergency blazes in Victoria. Alerts in South Australia have been downgraded, thankfully. Today we've got high temperatures and strengthening winds at the moment, and that is going to continue for the afternoon, forecast in several states. In New South Wales, authorities warn the weather could cause erratic fire behaviour. There are total fire bans in 10 regions as well, and temperatures are forecast to reach up to 46 in central New South Wales. In Victoria, the state of disaster has been declared. That was extended, of course. That was announced yesterday in Victoria, so extended in this current climate. They are hoping it'll be the last particularly hot day, but that's again been extended, in particular into the north and northeast. We've got our reporters standing by in key locations. We begin with Stella Todorovic at New South Wales RFS headquarters. Stella, what can you tell us?
Well, Tom, we're going to see temperatures soar. It's going to be a very hot day into the high 30s and low 40s for parts of New South Wales. This paired back with strong winds. We're going to see a wind change in the afternoon. A southwesterly is expected inland, and that's going to fan the flames of those fires in the snowy valleys. And also, we're going to see a southerly come through very late this evening along the south coast. This all coupled with these hot, dry winds is going to create erratic and dangerous fire conditions for crews on the ground. If we look at the fire prediction map, the concerns really are for the southern slopes, but also for the south coast. That Kangaroo blaze on the south coast and also the Moreton fire in the southern highlands could be affected and impacted dramatically by that southerly change. And in times of crisis and these conditions, these dangerous conditions such as the ones that we're going to be seeing today, RFS Commissioner Shane Fitzsimmons says it's all hands on deck.
We've got the ADF, all the different arms of the ADF working with us, and I bumped into some of them yesterday. So they're doing everything from logistics, welfare support, right through to specialist operations with aircraft. We've got machinery on the ground. We've got medical teams. There's a whole raft of things that are being well and truly integrated into state-based resources, contracted resources, the fire and emergency services. So everyone is doing their part in this very cohesive and coordinated firefighting and fire response and recovery effort.
So, Stella, still that fire threat, and others are going to communities and counting the cost of damage. Nearly 2,000 homes destroyed so far in New South Wales.
That's right, Tom, and sadly 1,097 of those homes were destroyed since New Year's Eve alone, and that number is expected to rise. That's just the figure that we've received from the RFS today, and crews are still trying to gain access to certain areas to really assess the damage that we've seen so far. Those fires on New Year's Eve and last Saturday really causing a lot of damage right across the southern parts of the state. So far this bushfire season alone, 20 people have tragically been killed in these fires and more than 5 million hectares razed. Today there are 10 total fire bans in place right across the state, including the Greater Sydney region and the Illawarra and Shoalhaven. It's going to be a very long day with all eyes on that southerly change and the southwesterly change that will be coming through this afternoon.
Stella, thank you. We'll keep updated on that situation. Andrea Crothers is the Victorian State Control Centre for us. And Andrea, the northeast and Gippsland regions, of course, these have been areas of concern all week. People have been being told to leave from yesterday.
That's right, Tom. Also tough news for Buck and East Buck. Now that's where we've seen that emergency warning flare up in the last hour. Now this is obviously a region that we saw in the past 2 weeks really battling those tough fire conditions. Many homes lost in that area, a life also tragically lost. So residents in that area have been told to leave. But we do know that today the East Gippsland and the northeast of the state and the Alpine regions are the major focus across Victoria. We do have 2 other emergency warnings that have been in place since last night. The first being around Combienbar, north northeast of Orbost, and also so that's in the East Gippsland, and then also in the Alpine region we're talking southeast of Wangaratta near Whitfield. That's where the other emergency warning is. So we've seen 240,000 text messages sent out yesterday directly to holidaymakers and residents, urging them to leave and head to their nearest regional cities. For those in the northeast, that's around the Wangaratta area, the Wodonga area. For those in the south or East Gippsland rather, you're more looking around the Sale and Bairnsdale area. There's thousands of people registered as part of those evacuation centres under Red Cross. It's been some really challenging conditions for firefighters. Here's Andrew Crisp.
The state's dry. It's really dry. What we're going to see today is we're actually going to see northerly winds, so 40 to 50 kilometres an hour. We're going to see some really strong, squally southwesterly winds on the change, gusting up to 90 kilometres an hour in some parts of the state. So it's going to be a challenging day for us here in Victoria.
Obviously, the other concern is also if thunderstorms do come, there could be lightning strikes which could spark even more fires. Tom?
Andrea, thank you. Meanwhile, we'll go live to Gabriella Power. She is at the CFA, also keeping across this situation in Victoria. Gab, what can you tell us?
Well, Tom, about 20 Army reservists have just arrived from Wangaratta here at the CFA in Harriettville. They've just had a briefing with the CFA to work out the best way they can support firefighters. Harriettville is just at the base of the Alpine region, and that's where we're seeing a lot of significant fire activities today. Firefighters are battling conditions, really tough conditions. It's about temperatures are soaring into the 30s, and we're already seeing wind gusts of about 70 kilometres an hour. Just in the last minute or so, we received a text message alert saying to evacuate now. So that's residents in Harriettville and in these areas at the base of the Alpine region. Now, earlier I spoke with some residents who said they weren't planning on leaving.
Got a car packed here with a few essentials and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah, ready to go if we need to.
Where will you go?
Look, it all depends on the fire and what it does kind of thing. Who knows? I mean, that way's not possible up towards Hotham. Heading that way depends on what the fire does, if it jumps the road early. So, yeah, might be the best thing to stay down here and, yeah, ride it out.
We came back on Monday.
Okay. And
so when the evacuation order was lifted, we returned, and we've just been continuing our preparations.
So you'll be monitoring conditions today, and that will determine if you go back?
All the time. I don't go anywhere without the app.
Yeah.
And any time the phone goes beep, I check what particular area is being updated.
There are fears that the fires burning in the Alpine region will merge with the fires burning in East Gippsland. We know that 3/4 of East Gippsland has already been burnt, but there are still large patches of unburnt land, and so communities that have been impacted by the bushfires could be re-impacted today. Now, there's also an emergency warning at Abbey Yard, and residents in Abbey Yard have been told that they must leave now. They've also been told that they need to conserve their tap water so the towns don't run out of water if a fire front approaches. Now, here's the advice from Andrew Crisp.
They should stay across their local conditions. We're saying if you can, then get out. If you're up in the northeast, look at going into Wodonga, into Wangaratta, get into a major centre. So you've just got to stay across your conditions. Don't just think about the fires we've got going at the moment, but there could be it would only take maybe one fire to block someone's way out. So better to be safe than sorry.
Tom, that southwesterly change is expected to hit the Alpine regions at about 6 o'clock tonight.
Yeah, another tense watch going on there, Gab, thank you. The Prime Minister says Australians are looking for a holistic review into the bushfires as he flags establishing a Royal Commission. Labor is broadly supportive but insists the PM must be acting on the inquiry's findings.
Opening the door for a Royal Commission into the bushfire crisis.
But I think Australians, because of the scale of this particular disaster, will be looking for something more holistic.
While the scope of the inquiry isn't clear, the PM has indicated it could look into hazard reduction burns and climate change.
We'll be working closely with state and territory authorities on how they're undertaken.
Mr Morrison flagged an inquiry during a phone hookup with MPs, but stressed it's something to consider down the track. It would need support from the states, but the PM confirms he hasn't held formal discussions.
We all have our responsibilities, but I do think there's merit in making sure that through consultation with the states and territories that all the relevant issues that need to be looked at here.
States have not ruled out backing a national inquiry once the fire season ends.
Oh, look, we're open to what the federal government would suggest in terms of what they want to do.
And most importantly, we owe it to those that have lost loved ones to make sure we reflect on this season, the preparations, the actions, the integrations. We will need to ensure that we learn all lessons available.
The PM continues to be peppered with questions about climate change and whether he believes community sentiment has shifted.
I accept that community sentiment today, when we've got severe and extreme fire conditions in New South Wales and in Victoria, would have me absolutely 100% focused on ensuring the response effort that may have to roll in within the next 24 hours is ready to go.
The Labor leader also supports a national inquiry in some form, but says the government must commit to taking action.
We need to take any recommendations and act on them. I think that's a critical thing.
The Greens, who have been leading the charge for a Royal Commission, want the terms of reference extended to looking at the government's failure to listen to advice from the experts. The Prime Minister clearly wants the focus to remain on the current bushfire emergency, but he has also now clearly laid out the markers for a more holistic inquiry once the bushfire season is over. Trudy McIntosh, Sky News, Canberra.
Ski resorts and small towns in southern New South Wales are likely to be in the path of major fires today. Let's go live to Eliza Edwards in Adaminaby. And Eliza, what are the big areas of concerns for firefighters?
Well, Tom, right now I'm in the tiny town of Adaminaby and it looks more like a ghost town. Most people here have heeded the warnings to get out, although there are other people who are hosing down their roofs, and the local bowling club as well is getting a hose down, preparing for if that fire front does impact today. That is the worry here, that the Duns Road fire and connecting blazes will hit this small town, and the current conditions aren't easing those anxieties. You can see the smoke behind me. It's incredibly windy here, wind gusts of more than 40 and 50 kilometres an hour, and it's also very hot too. So firefighters around here facing some incredibly challenging conditions, and the impact of that has been immediate. We've seen advice level fires upgraded to watch and act this morning. They are in place for the Green Valley, Duns Road, the East Orney Creek and the Yellow Bog Road fires as well. There's also a concern further south for the ski fields, where fire retardant is being used on the blazes around there to try and protect Thredbo, Perisher and Charlotte's Pass as well. And the snowmaking machines will also be turned on there as the last line of defence. The RFS Deputy Commissioner says that there is a concern for the whole area of the Kosciuszko National Park.
Most of our concern today is going to be in the southern part of the state, particularly around that Snow Mountains, Tumut area. That's where the peak of the weather will be, very strong winds, low humidity and high temperatures. So we're quite concerned about that and some of the towns in those general areas.
Tom, the town of Adaminaby is famous for its trout fishing. You can see the big trout behind me there, and locals here will be hoping this town is spared by the indiscriminate fire front.
Yeah, a tough watch there as well for a lot of different towns affected, and of course what happens to tourism there in the future. Meanwhile, temperatures are set to soar in western New South Wales today. We've got strong dry winds wreaking havoc on firegrounds across inland areas. Live to Julia Bradley, who's in Penrith. Julia, it's going to top 42 degrees where you are.
That's right, Tom. Right now we're experiencing searing temperatures across most of our inland areas across the state. In Penrith, where I am, 42 degrees atop, expected around 3 p.m. this afternoon. The same in Richmond, also going for a top of 42 degrees. Now we do also see temperatures up to 38 degrees in some areas further west, and certainly in the southern highlands across some of our dangerous fire zones. But we do have a little bit more humidity in the air, which means we do see a very high fire danger, unlike some of the extreme levels being felt further south.
Sydney itself, we can see a bit of cloud clearing this afternoon. As mentioned, about 30 degrees on the coast and in the city, but up to 42 degrees in the west today. So Penrith, Richmond, that's still significantly less than it spiked to last Saturday. Poor air quality alert remains current.
So that southerly wind change is expected to reach Sydney at about midnight tonight. We are going to see wind gusts, particularly in our coastal areas, more than 70 kilometres per hour. And we also do have a few dust clouds as storms on the way, particularly for our far western areas. Around about an hour we should start seeing some dust clouds in the air, and further east by this evening, but things should start to calm down by the weekend. We could see a 10-degree temperature drop in some of our western areas.
Julia, thank you. An out-of-control bushfire, meanwhile, which threatened lives and homes in Perth's southern suburbs, has been downgraded. The threat is far from over, though, as fire crews face challenging wind conditions.
This is one of the many roads expected to remain closed for much of today as fire crews work to keep the blaze near Baldivis contained. 180 firefighters are on the ground strengthening containment lines, which crews spent all night building up. The blaze was downgraded to a watch and act level in the early hours of this morning, but local residents are reportedly not allowed back to their homes just yet because of the changing wind conditions, which made battling this fire so difficult overnight. Lives and homes were under threat when the blaze first flared up around midday yesterday. The fire has since burned through more than 1,200 hectares of land. So far, there hasn't been any reports of damage to homes. An evacuation centre in Rockingham, just south of the blaze, is expected to remain open today, housing residents who chose to flee the flames. Authorities believe the cause of the fire was accidental. Residents are being told to keep up to date with emergency warnings, as the fire situation may change at any time.
Emergency warnings on South Australia's Kangaroo Island have been downgraded, with light rain helping firefighters get the upper hand. 2 fires threatened lives and homes yesterday on the island at Vivon Bay and Pandana. 230 firefighters and 60 fire trucks are still working. 170,000 hectares of Kangaroo Island have also been burnt. But Emergency Services Minister Corey Wingard says it could have been much worse.
We are doing the rapid assessment, but thankfully there was not the damage that was once thought could have happened through Vivon Bay. I'd like to take this chance too to acknowledge the planning and the resilience of the people on the island to actually evacuate out of Vivon Bay to make sure that was the case, and it did show last night that was a good decision.
People in that area are still being urged to monitor conditions.